So good morning, everyone. So my name is Ashish. I lead the industrial IoT and IIOT practice in Wipro, and it's great to be here with all the experts from the industries. Now I work across with various different industries, covering utilities, energy, oil and gas, manufacturing, and my charter is to see how the technologies in one industry can be cross-leveraged and operational efficiencies, asset management, it cuts across various industries and there are best practices which we can leverage. So I'll try to cover some of those things. Now, if you look at any of the industries, including oil and gas, these are the broad categories or needs, which I would say. So one aspect is about bringing the operational excellence, operational efficiencies, and all of these four are intertwined. So if you bring operational efficiencies, you also do good for your sustainability. You also meet regulation and compliance, and all of this is basically enabled by data-driven insights, right? How can you use the new kind of data from your assets and the data which you already had lying in various systems of your organizations to draw some insights out of it, which can either help you run your businesses more efficiently or impacting your bottom line and top line. Now, if you look at oil and gas, and obviously in your industry there are various challenges which are some are under the control, some are not under the control. I would like to bucket it in three broad areas. One is efficiency, other is reliability, and the third is performance. And what do we mean by that? When we talk about reliability, the case studies have shown that the unplanned outages results in close to around 40 million USD losses. Now, can we look at ways to bring it a 15 to 10% reduction in that? That's a huge cost saving. When we talk about efficiency in some of the large pipeline operators, there is a critical asset which is a pump which is used. And any large organization on an annual basis spend close to $50 to $100 million just on energy, used for the pumps. Now, even if we can bring some 5% efficiency in pump operations, that's a huge cost saving, right? So this is the second item. And third is performance, right? All of these industries are very heavy asset intensive. The question is, am I utilizing my assets fully? Are they not utilized completely? Do I need to bring more capital assets or not? So the goal is to see whether I am using my assets completely or not. Now, again, think of a scenario. If you are able to bring around a 2 million worth of saving, considering that's a 200 million sort of profits which you are getting, we are talking about some 10 million worth of thresholds which you have sort of released for your operation, right? So all these three things I think are very important for us to look. And some of the solutions for them are not very complicated. These are simple solutions. Some of them are low-hanging fruit. Some of them require you to look into feature direction in order to do that. Now, all four of them which you see on the screen are quite big topics in itself. So let's focus on the operations part of it, which is also the core part of the focus, right? Now, these are some, now that we have talked about what the industry needs, these, as per me, are some of the key objectives which we can drive, which falls around some of these areas. If you look at sustainability, right, which is not mentioned over here, but sustainability should not be looked into just by doing something for the environment or reducing the carbon footprint. It also have a huge potential towards the cost saving. Some time back, we did an engagement with a large retailer across 2,000 stores in US, and within the period of 3 years of that, once they started looking into their energy consumption and reduction, they came from a score of 48 to a 95 on the carbon disclosure leadership index. And it is not just about that, they also were able to save 17% of their energy costs, right? So it's a huge cost saving which goes in when you talk about sustainability. And same is the case with some of the other aspects. The second aspect, if you look out, is about the workforce, right? The question about regulatory and compliance. Now, as per the last data from OSHA, out of close to 30,000 inspections they do, they find that almost 76% leads to some non-conformance. And in US alone, the annual cost of these comes to around $250 million, right? And there's a very simple problem because of which it happens is because the employees don't follow the guidelines set forward. So can we look into some tools and technologies which can help them, right? Can we look at a smart helmet, for example, which can identify whether the employee is following the standard procedure, not is he there in a location which he is not supposed to do, is he there in a hazardous location or not, and do that. So obviously there's one is a technology piece, and then the second piece is about the whole organization change process, because just giving him a helmet, he's not going to wear it, right? So what are the incentives which can be provided to the employees? The other very important aspects is whole about the use of data. Can we sort of look into utilizing your assets to build certain models? For example, asset risk score, right? And now, how can I look at using those models to identify what is the risk to my assets? Can I know it early enough or not? How do I sort of plan my project schedule from conceptualizing to initiation to planning to execution to then operations? How much budget do I allocate for unplanned outages versus planned outages? How much spare part do I have in my inventory? What kind of inventories do I need to have in my stock early enough? Now, it's not that these are something new. We are already doing it, but all of these are done in silos. Some of these are automated, some of these are manual, but they are not connected together, right? So if we are able to connect these things together, so that my assets data can tell me how much should my spare part be, so that I can look into my asset performance and then gear my task force where to focus more. Is there some station which requires more immediate attention? Is there some station which is running over capacity, so that I can plan my CAPEX investments better? So all of these are the key objectives which we sort of need to look into. Now, how does it come together, right? So let's look into this and sort of slice and dice it piece by piece. Let's look at it at the below part, which is about the data. And let's segregate the data into two parts. One is the data which is coming from your control systems, PLC systems, SCADA systems, the sensors you have rolled out, the valves, the pumps, the compressors, and all of that. And the second part of data is something which you already have, right? Which is around the usage data, which is around your work schedule data, which is about your budget data. Now, these are the three important processes which consume the data, and they have to talk to each other, which doesn't happen today. One is your control process. The control process is basically responsible to talk to all of your assets, to consume the data from the assets, and also to control the assets. And then it talks to some of the other processes, like an advisory process. So for example, if the control process is getting a data from your pump and it identifies an anomaly based on the model which is created in the advisory process, it can then instruct the pump to probably run it at a lower capacity or a lower flow so that the operation still continues, but then you can trigger a service order for that, right? So the people can go and sort of fix it. So that's an example of a control process. Similarly is a work and parts management. Now, the whole idea behind it is how I can use my asset data to better plan my workforce and my maintenance jobs. Again, taking an example of a pipeline, and a pipeline has various ways in which it can stop working or can burst, right? Corrosion is one of them. Somebody digging over there is another one. The assets between the pipes cannot function, because of which the load can increase in various different ways, right? Now, if we are able to identify it and look at the historical data, I can then plan my spare parts inventory workforce around that, right? So this is and again, if you see, this goes hand in hand with your advisory process, which I will talk about, and your control process, because they all three have to talk to each other. And the core is basically your advisory process, which is the one which runs all your data analytics and models, consuming the data from both of these processes and then feeding back the insights to them in terms of what has to be done. And this is the kind of system which we believe we need to sort of start looking into within each industry, so that you have a consolidated view of your operations, not just covering assets, but also your IT, and then start having a consolidated look at it, right? So this is one of them. Now, this talks about what we call as a value grid. Now, this doesn't talks about obviously all the system services which you roll out, but gives you a way of identifying how within your organization you can start onto this journey by looking into two grids basically. One is about how complex is the service and thereby what are the outcomes I'm going to achieve. And the other is about how complex is it in terms of the maturity and the rollout, right? And the more you go up, the more outcomes you start receiving. And it also shows how digitally mature you are within an organization, right? So you can chalk out your processes, you can chalk out your initiative within this grid to find out where you are today, and possibly, you know, steps in terms of where you want to lead. Looking at to the previous sort of slide which I spoke about in terms of what the overall solution should be. Now, having said all of that, right, and we always talk about these things, we still have a lot of things missing in any of the industries, right? Now, the way the operations as we see today are doing are very, very, very different. I was talking to one of the upstream customers some time back, and he was explaining me about that, because some of these oil rigs are like small cities, right? So there are a lot of people working there, a lot of sensors, a lot of assets, anything can go wrong. And if that has to be fixed, they have to put people, assets, instruments, spare parts onto a helicopter and get those people across there to fix it. So it's more like a fire drill they have to go through. Now, what they're trying to do is to bring edge intelligence over there, which is, you know, transforming the way they do the business. So now they have these, you know, these hardware boxes over there, which can store a couple of terabytes of data and can run heavy-duty analytics over there. Because getting the data from oil rig and keep on sending it to cloud is not a viable option always, right? So now they are able to get the data, process it at the edge, give the local insights in terms of what has to be done. And now they have a much better view in terms of what my operations are doing. They are able to predict a lot of these things beforehand and plan out their activities better. So it's vastly improving their operation. Second, if you would have seen a recent announcement where Microsoft has tied up with DJI. DJI manufactures some of the industrial drones, and also with a compute and storage major, and working on a very interesting use case, right? So think about this, where a service engineer who has to go to a pipeline maintenance job or inspection job can actually drive down his truck with a small box in the boot of the truck, and the box is very heavy duty. It can again store a couple of terabytes of data and can run your AI and ML analytics model over there. And once he reaches there, there's a drone which takes over from the truck and then starts looking into the pipelines for their conditions. And the drone has some level of intelligence through which it can detect anomalies, but then the challenge earlier was that you can only do that much, right? And because you can't send that amount of data onto the cloud for processing. But now the drone is basically beaming back the data onto the box in the truck. And the truck then starts analyzing the data and giving the insights to the person who is there on the field, right? So then he can take better judgment in terms of what has to be done. So that's a very interesting use case towards which this industry is moving in terms of how we can bring a lot of analytics on the edge in terms of figuring out some of the solutions to the problems. Coming back, while we say a lot of automation, but then there are a lot of aspects where there is still a lot of manual intervention which is there today. And this ties back to my, if you recollect the earlier part which I spoke about in terms of the tweaks which we can do to our processes to gain maximum benefits out of it, right? So can we automate a simple process like that, where people don't have to go over there and figure out what is happening? Same thing is like that. The maintenance is still reactive, right? There's no proactive, data-driven kind of maintenance activity. It is there. You basically, it's like a fire drill, as I said. Something happens, you go there and fix it, which obviously leads to a lot of downtime and asset condition and lifetime corrosion. Planning has to be doesn't takes into account a lot of data elements today. So this is something which is a low-hanging fruit. There is a lot of data lying around in some of the operations which you do, but the question is how do you integrate and look into those data in terms of what is helpful for you. Now, all what I spoke about indicates that the problem which we are trying to solve about is not about technology. The problem is about keeping the user at the center. Now, think about it. You have created a great solution. It is giving you insights, and then you have provided that insight into a tablet which you have given to your service engineer, and he goes into the field to fix certain assets. Now, his hands are like all greasy, right? So now we are expecting him to look at the tablet, click on it, and figure out insights, which is just not possible for him to do. Right, so it's about keeping a human-centric approach, keep the user into the center, and then see what kind of solutions can be built, what kind of solutions are the stakeholders requiring, and then how do we build it, right? So it's not about technology, but it's about bringing that user experience into the picture, the human psychology into the picture, looking into your business processes and sees how some of these processes can be changed. I think one of the delegates touched about a very important aspects about change management, right? So it's also about change management for any of these initiatives to successful. And finally, obviously, is about commercial, because a lot of customers I speak about understand the benefit, but then what we also need to see is some of these requires investment. None of these initiatives are cheaper to start. So what is important is to build the right ROI model and see how much investment and where we have to invest to get the right benefits. So with this, I would sort of like to conclude my session. Again, in the end, I would just want to say that if we are able to mix the business and this human-centric design approach, I think we have done majority of the solution. The rest of the things will sort of fall in place if we go with this approach. With this, I would like to thank everyone over here to listening out, and I hope that I have been able to give you certain insights which will be helpful for your business, and hope to connect back to you, later. Thank you.